we destroy ourselves. Destroy ourselves, whether we have a developed intellect or we've never developed our intellect. When we lose that capacity to discern, to judge, to reason, the capacity to see the end in the beginning, we destroy ourselves. Welcome back to today's reflection on the Daily Vedonkadonk. A reflection that I've been thinking about since the early morning hours today in a lecture from Swami. You can check out the link in the show notes. All of the lectures that everyone in the ashram is the same lectures that they're seeing. It's the most crazy modern technological approach to a spiritual path as I've seen. This little ashram in India that we all study with has an app, Vedanta World, and it's friggin' awesome. It's very simple. It's what you'd expect from a little nonprofit ashram, but man, the lecture content is not what you expect. So systematic. So good. And Swami, now he's 97, but the founder of the ashram, and this morning he mentioned this phrase, lose your intellect and you are destroyed. And I've been thinking about this ever since. This philosophy, it emphasizes the makeup of a human. Makeup of any of us is a body, a mind, and an intellect. The first two we all take for granted. We hear that everywhere. But this philosophy says you have an additional internal equipment, not just a mind, which we all know we have or talk about, but you have this other subtle equipment, a more powerful equipment. So the mind is to the body, the intellect. This even subtler equipment than the mind is to the mind. It is the driver and the driver's seat. The mind is the steering wheel. The body is the car. They work together, ideally. They work together to get you wherever you want to go in life. But if we take the intellect for granted, we don't think about it, we don't cultivate it, we never become great drivers, we end up in ditches, we end up in wrecks, we end up not getting where we wanted to go. Similar to if we don't pay attention to the mind and we're just sloppy with the wheel, it's going to be a bad time. Same if you don't pay attention to the body. Great driver, great steering wheel, nice grip, one of those little leather grip type of steering wheels. But then the car's run down. It's not going to get you where you want to go. Body, mind, and intellect. The intellect, this all-important subtle equipment that we in the West never even talk about, is the driver. We reach our capacity to the extent that we develop our intellect. Aristotle said, there's nothing more important than the development of one's character. There's nothing more important. There's nothing more important that we could do than to develop our character. This is very similar in that the development of our intellect within Vedanta is the most important thing that we could do, like building our muscle. It requires constant dedication to its improvement. Cultivating, building, investing into our intellect and therefore into our character. The driver behind our decisions. What's interesting about the Aristotle quote is, and I mentioned this recently in a Venice Vedanta Club meeting, that this famous cognitive scientist, John Vervaeke, he would tell this to his class. He'd say, Aristotle once said that the most important work we do is the cultivation of our character. Who here agrees with that? And all of his college students raise their hands, say, yeah, it's obvious, or they nod their heads. Then he'd ask them, he'd just spot check one by one and say, and what do you do each day to cultivate your character? And the kid's like, I go to class, come up with all kinds of answers. They'd say, well, which of you really prioritizes your physical health, working out? And a few people raise their hands and you'd say, how many times a week do you prioritize going to the gym? They'd say 5 days a week, 3 days a week, 6 days a week. They'd say, well, how many days a week do you spend cultivating your character? And they would have no idea what he's talking about or how to cultivate our character. And this is right on the other side of nodding their heads and total agreement that, development of our character. I can see how that'd be the most important thing. And yet, none of us do anything on a daily, much less for many of us. None of us do anything on a weekly or monthly or yearly basis to develop. And this philosophy, when it comes to developing our intellect, I mentioned it last episode. It's question everything. Don't take anything for granted, and study, reflect daily. Question everything. Don't take anything for granted, good or bad in our lives. Study, reflect daily. Those 3 daily practices will cultivate your intellect, your character to an incalculable degree. You will have the strongest character of anyone around you if you do those 3 things. You could study Socrates, you could study Aristotle, you could study Augustine, you could study Rumi, you could study Vedanta Treatise. I highly recommend that. That single book, you could study that over and over again, and it will cultivate your character. It will develop the hell out of your intellect. This philosophy puts all of that emphasis on the development, and yet today's lecture kind of blew my mind on an aspect that I hadn't really thought of lose your intellect. Stop developing it, and what happens? Give it away. Say, you know what? I'm just going to let the car drive itself. And I see this happen in my life. Within myself, when I see the mind, which the mind just wants. The mind is our emotions, our desires, our preferences, our feelings. The intellect is our capacity to discern, to judge, to reason. This is the right decision over that. But I'll see it in the course of the day, certainly in the course of a week, where my intellect just shrinks. And I see my mind jumping in with some powerful, savvy argument, or just some straight up emotional argument after a long day if I haven't been prioritizing my sleep, and that's its own application of the intellect. If I haven't been taking care of myself or putting myself in scenarios where it's like, wow, okay, yeah, my intellect is quite weak right now because I have not developed it over the last 3 days of not prioritizing sleep, not doing the things that I should. The guilt, knowing that I didn't do this or didn't do that. And I'll see the mind just jump in and say, you know what? We're going to yell at the 4-year-old that did this thing that I didn't want them to do. See the mind creep in and say, you know what? We could say this in this marketing claim if we word it this other way. And I see the mind jump in into work of like, well, this person could fit in this role, even though they had maybe 1 or 2 yellow flags, probably red flags actually. But we really need to fill that role. And yeah, maybe we could justify it because, well, the need is so high. We've been trying to fill that role for months. And if the intellect is not strong, the mind just takes over, takes the wheel. And you let the mind do this again and again and again. And this is where Swami's words just hit home this morning. We destroy ourselves. Destroy ourselves, whether we have a developed intellect or we've never developed our intellect. When we lose that capacity to discern, to judge, to reason, the capacity to see the end in the beginning, we destroy ourselves. When we don't have that capacity to see the end in the beginning, it's one of the ways the intellect is defined in Vedanta. When we don't have that capacity, like driving the car, drive right into traffic. The windshield is so muddy you don't even see the red light. You have no idea that this is a dead-end street, that this road is going to go from concrete to gravel to dirt to nothing and dead ends. And man, you put 20 or 30 years into that pursuit. Put 10 years into a relationship that, if your intellect was strong, would have told you at the beginning. That's even worse than hiring someone in the wrong seat. 10 years prior, your intellect could have showed you this isn't the right person for a spouse, for a partner, for a co-founder, for a best friend. But with an undeveloped intellect or a savvy mind, and weak moment after weak moment of the intellect just given the reins over to that mind, we destroy ourselves. Whenever I see the mind creep in and take over, now I've seen the pattern enough to where I just know, like, oh, this is going to be a self-sabotage moment. Overreact to the 4-year-old, and you're dealing with it for that inconvenience that would have been 4 minutes to clean something up, ends up being 45 minutes of tears. That inconvenience to do something the right way, to hire the right person, to have that hard conversation, that slight inconvenience ends up being weeks, months, years of a detour. Lose our intellect and we destroy ourselves. It really can get that bad. Not just a detour, not just 45-minute inconvenience, but when we lose the intellect completely, you make a few wrong decisions and it's true tragedy. As Swami will point out, Shakespearean plays, the tragedies, the Shakespearean tragedies, it's one decision and everyone is dead at the end. That courage and could have been 1, 2, 3 weeks of courage to break from that relationship. You say, no, we're going to stick it out. You go and get married. You have kids. It's not the right person and destroys worlds. We can always recover. We can always bounce back. But man, we can really dig ourselves into massive holes. Example Swami gives all the time of Shakespearean tragedy where it's one decision, everybody's dead at the end. Macbeth, where you have Duncan, the king, and you have Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. And you have Lady Macbeth telling Macbeth, hey, you should be in King Duncan's place. You should be king. That decision to plant that seed, Macbeth's decision to listen to it, to think about it, say, yeah, I wonder if I should be. Could I be? What would that be like? Handing the reins over to the mind. And everyone is dead at the end of the play. Lose our intellect with something big, and it ends up being an absolute tragedy. Unavoidable, unnecessary tragedy. Lose our intellect and we destroy ourselves. That's the shadow, the underbelly, the dark side of not developing our intellect. Most of the episodes, most of the reflections are on the upside, the benefits, just how life just starts to feel elegant and seamless, nearly effortless. But it's a good reminder to have the stark contrast of what life looks like when we don't develop our intellect, when we lose our intellect. And that is today's reflection from the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.